Here's a special important message.
Hello, welcome to episode 13 in season 2 of We Are the Road Crew, the podcast which takes you behind the scenes in the world of live music and speaks to some of the people who are responsible for putting on some of the best gigs in music history. Am I overselling that? I actually don't think I am. Hello, I'm your host. My name's Stephen Hill. Thanks very much for checking out the podcast. Before I start and talk about our guest, I just want to say thanks and a socially distanced fist bump to our friends at Signature Brew who have continued to support the podcast throughout season 2. As I've said every week since we've been doing this, Signature Brew have been brewing music-inspired beers and supporting the world of live music like we like to do since 2011. They do a plethora of fine beers. They've worked with the likes of Idols, they've worked with Mastodon, Slaves, Enter Shikari, Mogwai, many other great bands. And they have a series of fantastic beers, including the Roadie, which I had a can of yesterday in my garden. I've just had my garden done. You don't need to know this, but I've just had my garden done, had my family round for a barbecue, and me and my brother-in-law cracked open a couple of cans of Roadie and sat there and enjoyed them in the sun with a barbecue. It was lovely stuff. If you'd like to do that, don't have to do your garden. Leave your garden as it is. Trust me, it's a pain in the bum. Signaturebrew.co.uk is the place to go, and you can order any of their many marvellous and fantastic beers. And we want to say a big thank you to them for their continued support of the podcast. Cheers, guys. This week on the show, my guest is Armando Aguirre, who is a stage manager and a guitar tech. He's worked with many bands in the world of metal over the years. He's worked with, starting off with Steven Adler from Guns N' Roses, one of his first ever jobs. So Steven Adler, the drummer from Appetite for Destruction, that was his first ever gig. So I'm sure we'll be talking to him lots about Steven Adler, but he has worked with many big bands from the world of metal, particularly the kind of halcyon days of heavy metal in the 80s and 90s. He's worked with a lot of the multi-platinum, million-selling big metal bands and rock bands from that period, ending up to where he is now as guitar tech for Scott Ian from Anthrax. I'm a massive fan of Anthrax, and particularly actually around the time that Armando was working with Anthrax, I think they were on rare form. So I'm going to be really interested to talk to him regarding one of, I think, not many people are going to disagree with this, one of the premier kind of definitive guitarists in the history of thrash metal, and somebody who's written some absolutely legendary songs in metal. Like, what does it take to get that crunchy Scott Ian guitar tone? We are about to find out. So here you go, episode 13 of We Are the Road Crew, and my guest is Armando Aguirre. Armando, I can't see you, but I can hear you. We're doing this remotely, and your camera's not working. So
that's probably better for you.
I can't see your beautiful visage, but I can hear you, and I do appreciate you taking the time to join us today. How are you? You okay?
Pleasure is mine. Oh yeah, I'm considering. I've been better.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of feels like the world is starting to get, as we record this on the 29th of June, it sort of feels like the world is starting to get back to bits of normality. But I imagine you yourself, it's going to be a long while before you can go and do the job that you've been doing for the last couple of decades.
Yep.
Yeah. Is there any chat about time frames and potential, getting back to work at all from your end?
Well, all I know right now is, as far as my current schedule, I don't have anything until January, in which might have one show in Japan. But,
oh my Lord. But
that's January, so the amount of things that can happen until then, God only knows.
How have you been coping with it all?
Well, it's like this thing that you've been for over a decade in the middle of a hurricane, and all of a sudden it stops, and then you go like, whoa, now what's going on? It was really hard in the beginning. It's still not easy, but it is what it is. So
I think most of the people we speak to are kind of persevering with it as much as they can and just hoping they can get back to work and try and take the positives.
Yeah, I'm not one of those people who feel better by knowing that everybody else is struggling as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I understand that I'm definitely not the only one here. So
Yeah, it's true.
We'll get through this the best we can, I hope.
I very much hope so, and very much hope that you can get back to work doing the thing that you do, which is what we're going to talk about now. So to kick it off, Armando, as this is mostly about live music, tell us about your first steps into getting into music, and particularly, I think most importantly, the kind of first gigs and the first live experiences that you remember in those formative years.
I got into music very young. I mean, I started like collecting tapes, when I was like 9 or 10. I was a massive Queen fan. I was only listening to Queen, actually. There was nothing else. I would listen to the radio, and then everything was boring, and I would go back to my Queen tapes.
Yeah, I've been there before. To be honest.
Yeah, right.
Queen Greatest Hits was one of the first albums that I ever got. That I was like, oh my goodness me!
Yeah, it's like if somebody asked me, it's like, what's your favorite band? Queen. You know what I mean? It's like hands down.
Yeah,
but then as a teenager, I really got into hard rock and heavy metal and all that stuff. And then I went to my first show when I was 13. I went to see Judas Priest.
Oh, brilliant.
And that was amazing because, I got the first, one thing was listening to the music in your room and like the album, the lyrics. I mean, the lyrics. At that time, I didn't speak any English because I was born in Barcelona, Spain. So, like all the artwork and all the magic of like the old, vinyl records. And then, going to a show and get that live and at that volume. And, I was, completely hooked.
Yeah.
At the moment. Then, I just went to as many shows as I could.
Yeah, sure.
I'm glad I did because I get to see, like really cool shows back then.
Yeah, Matt. And what sort of year were you talking about when you first saw Judas Priest? I'm sort of interested in what era
that was
Priest.
May 20th, 1988. That was the Remy Down tour.
So that's just before we got into kind of Painkiller era.
I saw that tour too with Pantera opening. That was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not bad, is it? That's a pretty good night out.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah. So this is full-blown 1980s Judas Priest at their sort of commercial zenith, like the behemoth, the juggernaut.
That was the tour after Turbo and the last tour with Dave Holland on drums.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was that lineup. The support band was this band from Germany called Bonfire.
That's a hell of a memory you got going on. I've never heard of Bonfire before, I've got to be honest. So presumably you're seeing, the denim and leather, the sort of big 1980s heavy metal production. How special a time was that for music, do you think?
I mean, it was, as I said, I'm like, after I attended my first show, I'm like, that's it. It's like, I want more of this. And my mom tells me, it's like, I remember you as a kid, you always wanted to go to shows and everything. And it just makes sense that you ended up, working shows, because that's what that was your thing.
So it's been quite an interesting journey, which we'll get into, where you got from kind of that Judas Priest show to, working with the huge names in rock and metal that you work with now. How did that very, very first sort of genesis of that happening, where did that begin, do you think? Where did that kind of first little spark of you thinking about getting behind the scenes and working with bands happen?
That was, of course, by accident. Mm-hmm. I mean, in my career, there's been like a series of, like Cinderella story events. I mean, not Cinderella the band. I mean, the fairy tale character.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, it's like, it was this thing that at that time, I was living in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. And one of my closest friends there, he was asked to facilitate booking a few shows for this band called Adler's Appetite, which is Steven Adler from Guns N' Roses.
Yep.
On his kind of like comeback sort of thing, after, like a long time, dealing with his issues and all that stuff. So they had a tour booked with dates in Spain and Italy, and they wanted to, extend it somehow. So this friend of mine, Rick, he knew Kerry Kelly, the guitar player in that band. And Kerry asked him if he could just, find him gigs in Holland or Germany or somewhere. And he did. It's like, and he got him like 2 gigs in Holland, and the last one of the tour was in Hanover, Germany. So next thing you know is this friend of mine, he's asking me, he's like, hey, you wanna come with us and help me out and everything? And because, we're going to be driving the van, and, it's like, I'm going to need somebody, to give me a hand.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And, the first night we picked them up at the airport in Amsterdam. We drive to The Hague, which is where the first show was happening. Mm-hmm. And of course, Steven, he wanted to go to a coffee shop. So off we went, to get some weed for Steven. And Steven, he's got like 6 or 7 bags of different weed. He's like a kid in a candy store, and he's got no idea how to roll a joint. So he's asking, like, who knows how to roll a joint? Now I'm like, yeah, I can do that. So I rolled him, like the most glorious, like fat joint you've ever seen in your life. And he goes like, this guy knows what he's doing. So, I was in there. And next thing you know, it's like they did the first show, and I was just like bringing like stage towels and bottles of water and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And for the second show, their tech, he goes, you mentioned last night that you play drums, right? I'm like, yeah. So he says, like, I'm having issues with my backline here. It's like, I don't have time to set up the drums. It's like, can you do it for me? I'm like, sure. So I set up the drums. Steven Adler shows up for sound check, sits down behind the drums. And he says, like, finally, he's like, after 2 weeks, he's like, you finally did it right. He goes, and Thomas, the tech, he goes like, no, it wasn't me. It was this guy. So points at me. Steven, looks at me. He goes like, oh, so you can roll joints and you can set up a drum kit? That's it. And then, I was Steven Adler's drum tech for a couple of years.
Yeah, a particular set of skills necessary to be hanging out with Steven Adler, I'd imagine. So how old were you at this point, if you don't mind me asking, Amando?
I started very late. I was in my late 20s. I was like,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right, fair enough. I mean, just before, we'll talk about Steven Adler in a minute, but just very, very quickly, what were you doing in that little period between, because we've kind of gone from a Judas Priest concert in Barcelona to Steven Adler in your kind of early teens to Steven Adler in your late 20s. What happened in the middle?
I was playing drums in like cover bands and stuff just for fun.
Yeah,
I never intended, to be a professional musician. But, it was fun. And then, then reality, like school ended and I didn't go to university. So like reality hit and I needed to get a job. So I got into office work, like airline related stuff. First I started with cargo and everything. That's how I ended up in Amsterdam, because the company I was working for at the airport in Barcelona, they just offered me a job. And I'm like, Amsterdam, sounds great. So I packed my stuff and next thing you know, it's like I'm living in Amsterdam. And I stayed there for like about 10 years. And after 10 years, that's when I moved to England.
Right, okay. Let's get back to Steven Adler. I mean, for a start, like, as that being your first job, sitting on the drum kit of the drum stool, in fact, of the guy who played on, I mean, arguably one of the biggest, no, well, not even arguably, one of the biggest albums in the history of rock music ever, in Appetite for Destruction. How exciting was that to suddenly just be like plonked on this guy's drum stool?
It was amazing. I mean, not only because of that, but also I became like really close and really good friends with everybody in the band, because the other guys in the band, they were musicians from all these 80s hard rock, like Sunset Strip bands and everything. I mean, the singer was Jizzy from Love Hate. Mm-hmm. Guitar player was Kerry Kelly, who was in Alice Cooper and Slash, and he's in Night Ranger now. Mm-hmm. Bass player was Robbie Crane, who was in RATT. And now he is in Black Star Riders. Right. Like it was all people like that.
Okay.
So we became like very, very tight, because they would come to Europe like once or twice a year, and I would go on tour with them and then go back to my day job. So that's how it started. It was great until, like on the last tour we did, Steven went off the rails and we were supposed to be out for 10 weeks. And after 8 days, we were back home because, the whole thing. Yeah, it was a pretty sad ending, but I heard that he's doing great now, so I'm very happy for him.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I mean, are you still in touch with him? When was the last time you spoke to him?
No, last time I saw him was Rocklahoma 2007.
Right.
So, it's been 13 years since I haven't seen Adler.
Yeah. He seems like a dude who has got some very serious and quite difficult to control demons.
Yeah. But that's what I said, that I heard that he's been quite straight, or as straight as he can be, for a while now. So I wish him the best, because he was always super nice to me. Super nice.
Do you think there's ever any chance? I mean, obviously we've got Duff and Slash back in Guns N' Roses now. I know Stephen's been kind of hankering for, a long, long time to get back in that band. I mean, from what you know of him as a drummer, obviously it would have been a while ago, but did you look at him and go, he should be the guy playing drums in Guns N' Roses? I think a lot of people want to see it.
It was this thing. It's like, this might sound a bit harsh, but when we did that first tour, as I said, it's like he had been, in obscurity for a very long time. So it wasn't only, that most of the people went to the show just to, to revisit all those songs and all that, but it was like, I wonder what he looks like now, because everybody knew about his issues and, the strokes and, the drugs and all that stuff. So, there was a big, part of gossip and, and me too, honestly. So when I saw him play at Soundcheck on the first show, I'm like, oh, wow. It's like I was truly, truly impressed, because he still had it. I mean, he's got a right foot that is just incredible. And he plays the songs the way that they're meant to be played. Like, you know what I mean? It's just he is the guy for that, for those songs. It's nobody else. It's truly, truly incredible.
That's the chemistry of that record, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of hard rock records released in 1987 in the 80s, and that is arguably the one that people remember to this day more than any of them. That it is the classic record from that era. Yeah,
it's like I saw that he did a couple shows in South America. They got him with Guns N' Roses on stadium shows, and then they brought him out, and he played a couple songs and everything. But I don't think that he will ever be back, and he knows that. I mean, let's face it, they don't need him. I mean, it's better for Axl and those guys, they're gonna fill up stadiums anyways, and they're gonna sell hundreds of thousands of tickets per tour, without him. So might as well get somebody else and not give him a cut, in the most harsh like business kind of how this business works. So they don't need him. And that's why I don't think that he will ever be back in Guns N' Roses on a permanent basis. That's my opinion, though. Okay, well, that's Steven Adler, but I'm quite interested into, having done this tour and having worked with Steven Adler, and suddenly at the kind of, the midpoint of your 20s, where most people are starting to think, what am I going to do to settle down? You basically do the opposite of that. How did that kind of way of thinking come about? Was there something that really twigged in you, or just something that happened that made you go, okay, I can probably do this? Well, here's like Cinderella story part 2. When Adler's band stopped, I went back to my normal life, thinking that it's been nice while it lasted, and that was it. But then like all the contacts that I had made during those couple of years, I met some people who kept calling me for and I smaller bands and stuff like that. So I still kept going on tour, but like very like short runs, like 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, And on one of the tours, I met this guy by the name of Steve Rochelle, who is the singer of this 80s band called Tuff, Tuff.
Right.
And he also runs Metal Sludge, that website. And at that time, he was the manager of a Swedish band called Veins of Jenna, who happened to be signed to Bam Margera's record label.
Oh, okay.
So that band, they got the opening slot on a major U.S. tour in the summer of 2007. They were hired as the opening act for Poison and RATT on this massive amphitheater arena tour. That was, it was super long. It was like 3.5 months. It was from June till September. So, it's like Stevie called me up and he goes like, hey, you want to do this? And I'm like, wow, it's like 3.5 months. It's like, I don't know if they're going to let me go for that long. So he goes like, well, check with your boss and then, call me back and let me know. So I started to freak out because I really wanted to do that. But then I'm like, what am I going to do? So I did what any sensible person would do, which is I called my dad. And I go like, Dad, it's like, it's like this is happening. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And my dad was like very clear. He was like, you're going to do two things. He was like, first of all, you're going to calm the fuck down. And second, like, you're going to go to your boss on Monday and you're going to quit your job. So I quit my job and I went to America. And that was amazing. I mean, my boss was super happy because he didn't like me one bit. Because I don't have a filter and I was rebellious. So, it's like, he was like, I was like, no, you got another job. It's like, you're not coming back. It's like, you leave. I'm like, fine. So I went to America and before you know it, it's like, here I am in this, I don't know how many trucks on that tour and buses. And I'm like, wow, it's like something I've never seen before.
Yeah.
First show was in Connecticut, in this humongous arena. And I'm like, wow, it's like, this is serious. But I also knew that I was not cut for that. I was not experienced enough to be at that level. So I kind of like freaked out a little bit. And I went to my friend Robbie Crane, who was playing with RATT. And he was also on that tour, the Adler's bass player.
Yeah.
So I go like, Robbie, it's like this, it's like, I don't think I'm good enough for this and everything. He goes like, you know what? It's like, don't worry, it's like, come with me. So he went and introduced me to his guitar tech. By the name of Raymond Grunwald. And he goes, Ray, it's like, this is my friend Armando. It's like teach him all you know. And Ray was like, dude, it's like every day when you show up at the venue, it's like first thing you do is like, you come see me and I'll teach you things. And he taught me everything I know. Him, Joey Stampo, like Warren Martinez, guitar tech. That was the level of people, who taught me how to do things. Techs of like guitar legends, it's like I just go to them. In Poison, same thing. It's like CC DeVille's guitar tech was Tom Weber, who later started being Eddie Van Halen's guitar tech. So it's like those people, I would go and see them work. Yeah. And, that's how you learn, I guess. I mean, if you don't learn from those people, who are you going to learn from, right?
Exactly. I mean, for a start, well done, your dad.
Right.
Like it could because there'd be a lot of dads who probably wouldn't say that, who would say the opposite of that. Don't you dare give up this, this sort of comfortable life to try.
Oh, my dad was totally fuck those guys. It's like, dude, it's like get on that plane, go to America, and show him how it's done. Yeah,
that's great. And secondly, I mean, pretty incredible to be starting a career at venues of that size.
Yeah,
which I mean, it does sound very, very daunting. I have to admit. I mean, that's quite a high bar to be starting your journey on, really, isn't it?
Correct. I mean, I was very, very fortunate, and I never took it for granted. I was working for the support band.
Yeah.
And we were playing a 40-minute set every night. And as soon as we were done, it's like I would shower and then like go watch people work. And see how people at that level, behave when things are good, when things are not good, especially. You know what I mean? Like in stressful situations, it's and that was my school. And also it's like you need to remember the fact that I quit my job. So it's like I was coming back home to nothing. So I had to, if that was the new path that I was choosing, I had to learn as much and as fast as I could.
Yeah. Having learned stuff at the end of the tour, did you feel like you were equipped to be able to do this sort of full time?
I ended up working for RATT for 2 years.
Well, there you go.
For the special guest on that tour. So you know what I mean? Yes, yeah, of course.
So you're sort of slowly working your way up the bill, basically. Yeah.
That's right.
So how was that working with RATT? And also, I mean, I was going to ask as well. I mean, at this point, particularly in the UK, so this would have been the sort of mid 2000s.
The US tour was 2008. Yeah, I was with RATT from 2008 till 2009.
Okay.
No, 2007 till 2009. I'm sorry.
So, I mean, this is just around the period, I think, where those bands that had been sort of, because once always the chat is, Sunset Strip in the 80s,
Yeah.
and then grunge came along and killed it all dead, and they were gone. And then I feel like that attitude started to thaw out a little bit towards the sort of mid to latter part of the noughties. And by sort of 2008, 2009, I mean, I remember going to Download in 2009, and it was Journey and Def Leppard and White Snake. And
yeah, there was some sort of like revival.
Yeah. So you were right there, I guess, when people were starting to re-look at those bands for sort of the second time around.
And I mean, because Journey and Def Leppard, they're more on the hard rock side of the whole thing. The Poison tour was kind of like the reference for what used to be like the like the most genuine Sunset Strip thing, from the 80s. At that time, it's like being on the Poison tour. Poison is the band that they would always get the support bands were, like all bands from the 80s. Whereas, like Def Leppard, they always go with, like more like a hard rock kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's like you're not going to see Def Leppard getting Faster Pussycat as an opening band.
No.
You know what I mean? Poison will
Yeah.
get Faster Pussycat and Winger and Great White and all those bands.
Mm.
So yeah, it's like being on the Poison tour was a lot of fun. It was fun.
Were they still kind of trying to relive those hedonistic days of their kind of glory period?
No, not really. No. They were, no. All those musicians, it's like even if they've been, like crazy in their 80s heyday and everything, it's like after that they were like all like past 40 and they're all like married and it's a business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's the occasional, but no, it's like you see all that stuff. It's the road crew who does that, all the crazy things, and or some bands they still do that. I'm not gonna mention names, but no, it's like RATT. They were like Stephen Percy was sober. Mm. Everybody was like just also it's like they didn't like each other that much, as you can tell right now, because there's only two members left. If you see the current lineup, it's like back at that time, Warren DeMartino was still there, Bobby Blotzer was there, everybody except for Robin Crosby, obviously, because he already passed away, and Juan, the bass player, is like Robbie was playing in place of Juan. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's it's like they would never like hang out or like party or it's like everybody was doing their own thing.
Right, fair enough.
But I got on great with everybody, so I had a lot of fun.
And did you see the kind of did the crowds grow or change at all? Because I think not only did that stuff start to get a little bit more sort of acceptable again around that period, but I think kind of younger people started getting into all that stuff as well. Did you kind of notice that happening in the crowd? Yeah,
especially when we came here to England. We did a UK tour in 2008 in the summer, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like the crowd was pretty young. I mean, there was all kinds of people. There was a ton of young people there. In America, not so much. In America, it's like they're classic rock now. So it's like it's dad music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But here in Europe, it's like the crowd was a lot younger. Yes.
So what happened after working with RATT? I mean, obviously, as we've discussed, you were kind of slowly but surely moving up the ladder. Did you get a little bit higher then?
Then I went into this period in which it's like I worked for a ton of different bands because in the last 10 years, it's like I've mainly been employed by two bands steadily. But up until that point, that's when I worked for a bunch of bands. Like, I don't know, I did, you name it. It's like a Great White, Winger. I did Glenn Hughes. I did Chris Slade on his AC/DC cover band. I did the Hooters, Ace Frehley, The Answer, Anathema, Death Angel, Creator. Like you name it. All kinds of bands.
I was going to ask you. I mean, one of those bands would have been. Was that Devin Townsend around that time?
Yeah, that was in 2011. That's when I said that in the last 10 years, like my thing has been, that was Devin. I started with Devin in March 2011 on the headline tour for his record. What was that? Addicted.
Yeah.
So that's when I started working for Devin.
Devin is not only is Devin a genius, He's a lovely, lovely human being as well, isn't he?
Devin is by far one of my top 10 favorite people in the world. I mean, I was his guitar tech for about 6 years, and it was amazing. What I appreciate the most about Devin is that he gave me the opportunity to grow as a guitar tech, because when I started with him, I could do what I could do, but it was a complete different ballgame. And he gave me the chance to, become his guitar tech. He molded me into, being the guy that he needed. So in order to get to that point, it's like you have to screw up. You know what I mean? Like every time I made a mistake, he never lost his cool with me. He gave me chance after chance until, I got it right. And that's really, really hard to find. And once again, Cinderella story number 3, it's like you're not going to find many people who are going to give you that kind of treatment in this business.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like I owe him, a big chunk of my career, obviously. It's like Devin is not only one of my favorite people, but he's been always like excellent at every level. So, it was sad when I left, but it's like it's fine. The way it ended was just, it's like he was gonna take a sabbatical. He was gonna be home for like a year, and I needed to keep working. And at that time, I already started working for Anthrax.
Yeah.
So
sure.
I had to choose if staying with Devin and do nothing, or go with Anthrax, who just released a record, and there was 2.5 years of work coming up.
Yeah.
So
not the worst choice in the world to have between those two artists, really, is it? It's a pretty good choice. I was going to ask, before we get into the kind of Anthrax chat, going back to Devin, I mean, not only as he is a lovely person, I would be interested to know how meticulous he is about, well, everything that he does, because he feels to me like every little thing you hear or see on a Devin Townsend project is record, or whether it's Devin on his own or Strapping Young Lad, Ocean Machine, whatever it is that he does, Retinal Circus, it all feels so deep and so rich. How challenging is it to give Devin the thing that he has in his head?
Extremely. I mean, as I said, it's like he was very nice, but he was not easy. He was never easy, because he would throw me, like curveballs constantly. You know what I mean? It's like we're talking about, like every tour was a different rig. He wanted to try new things. He's Devin Townsend, so companies, they send him stuff. So he just wanted to try everything. So you know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to give you an example. It's like, that was 2015 or 16. We started the tour at Wacken in Germany at the big festival. Yeah. And we haven't done any rehearsals. There's, and he shows up, and I'm in the dressing room. I go to see him. I'm like, "Hey, Devin, what's up?" And he says, like, "Oh, by the way, it's like, here's what we're gonna do with my pedal board." I go like, "Oh, so you have a pedal board on this tour?" You know what I mean? It's like, I got zero info. And he's like, "Yeah." So he grabs an old set list, and with a Sharpie, he just like draws, like the pedal board, and he goes like, "This pedal first, da 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 da." And then, he opens his suitcase and starts like digging out pedals, between, like his underwear and everything. And he goes like, "Yeah, here's the pedals," and, like, make it happen. So this is like 3 hours before going on at Wacken, like broadcasted, like online, for the whole universe to see forever and ever. You know what I mean? And I have to build a pedal board, with whatever I find. That was Devin. Or, and also it's like, it was never like, "Oh, Armando, you have to do this." It was like, "Hey, what do you think would you mind doing this?" And my motto at that time was like, what Devin wants, Devin gets, you know what I mean? And that's where, that's what it was like. It was crazy sometimes. Yeah. Also, it's like, Devin is that guy who, if somebody builds, like the most indestructible piece of gear, Devin will break it. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, he strikes me as a sort who might, fiddle with it or abuse it. He even designed his new signature model. Apparently, it's like he designed it in a way that the headstock is in a certain angle, so when you step on it, it wouldn't snap the neck, because because that's how clumsy he is. You know what I mean? So it's like he designed his signature model, like keeping that in mind. That if you drop the guitar, like the headstock will not snap. It's crazy.
I mean, I guess that sounds like difficult for you to work with somebody like that, but then at the same time, I enjoy hearing that, not that I enjoy hearing you going, oh God, I've got to build a pedal board before they go on at Varken, but I enjoy hearing the fact that Devin Townsend is as kind of mad and scatterbrained and creative as his music would suggest. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but he's very well together. I mean, he's like that creative mind.
Yeah.
There's nothing happens by chance, or it's like Devin knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah. So many ideas must be flowing through that man's head at one time. That made me laugh because as you know, it's like he's releasing records, like left and right, and the funniest thing about Devin is that we're about to start the tour promoting a record, and he goes like, "Oh, this sucks." And I go like, "Why?" He goes like, "Because I don't like this record anymore." It's like, this record was fucking 6 months ago. You know what I mean? It's like my head is somewhere else now, and I have to promote this thing that I don't care about anymore. It's like that because he's always like thinking forward. What am I gonna do next? It's like if it was up to him, it's like it would be like release everything and no promotion, no nothing, because whatever is released, it's recorded, it's done. You know what I mean? Like he's already thinking about the next. Yeah, what a dude. I didn't actually ever go to... I mean, I mentioned the Retinal Circus shows. Were you there during that? Because that seems like...
I did because Devin would always do the special London shows, as we call them, which were like completely... we would wing everything. It was because there was no budget. And he wanted to do like really big things and, like cheeseburgers, falling from the sky and like things like that. And there was no budget, so we couldn't like book a place for a week and rehearse that. So it's like when we did the Roundhouse, when we did the Retinal Circus, like the previous day, it's like we all showed up, nobody knew nothing, we had no idea what was going on about, and we rehearsed that in one day and did it, and it worked. Same thing with the 4 shows that we did in 2011, the By a Thread thing, that we did his last 4 records, and we did that thing too. Everything was improvised, and the reason it's called By a Thread is because nobody, we're all shocked that everything worked. You know what I mean? Because there was nothing. I mean, so we just did it like that with no rehearsal, no solid pre-planning. You know what I mean? It was the only planning was like building this gigantic cheeseburger that had to appear on stage for like 10 seconds at some point, and then that was it. And then like we have like 4 records in their entirety with guests, and my guitar world on those 4 shows was just ridiculous. It's like I had like 20 something guitars because I was looking after everybody in the DTP band, but there was the guests, and you know what I mean? It was just insane. But at the same time, that's what, I never complained, and, I just did what needed to be done.
Yeah.
And that's how you learn.
That's amazing. I mean, it's amazing to hear that because, I mean, the shows from having watched like I say, I wasn't on a night, but having watched the clips on YouTube and seen the DVD and stuff, it was an amazing thing. And it feels like hearing that, it's like, it's like a duck, the duck's legs, it floats along on the surface looking all fine and lovely, and underneath its legs are going absolutely crazy. And it sounds like, like that was the kind of experience.
It wasn't easy, trust me. It was really, really stressful. But we made it happen. The coolest thing I can tell you about my time with Devin, what I like the most, besides, him, like giving me the chance, to become, or like to climb a couple steps, on my guitar teching abilities and everything. But what I like the most is that when I started working for Devin, in some markets, we were playing bars because when Strapping ended, he went into retirement. He wanted to be a producer, and he had a kid and all that stuff. So he retired from touring. And then, in 2010, he came back. And apparently the first road crew that he had, he was not entirely happy. And then, he got me and Paul Collins and Mike St. John, the three of us, and Dave Price, the four of us. We were Devin's crew for like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But the thing is that what I like the most is the evolution that we had from like playing in bars in some markets like Switzerland or like some places in Germany. We were playing bars literally, or like a show we had on a Canadian tour in 2012. Or no, that was the winter 2011, right before Christmas. We did a Canadian tour right before Christmas. Can you imagine that? Anyway, nice. So we were in this place called Kingston, Ontario. And the venue was so small. It was upstairs on the first floor of an Irish pub or something like that. The show was advertised in a chalkboard, and we went upstairs, and the stage was so small that we couldn't fit. I mean, I'm not talking about production. I'm just talking about the drum kit and amplifiers. Like there was no room for that. So we decided to turn that show into an acoustic show because there was no room. Mm. And then I was by the door next to the stage, and then with Devin's acoustic guitars, I was tuning acoustic guitars while selling merch. It was amazing. It's like I would like sell a T-shirt. I'm like, hold on 1 second, turn around, fucking tune a guitar, handing him a guitar, and then like keep selling T-shirts. We went from that, and 4.5 years later, we did a 4-hour show at the Royal Albert Hall.
Yeah, that's insane, unbelievable.
The amount of touring that we did in those 4 years, it was almost inhuman. It was insane.
Yeah.
Because also it's like Devin's catalog is so extensive that we fit everywhere. We would do like prog metal festivals. We could open for, we would do like death metal festivals. We would do all kinds of stuff. He would just like change the set according to the style of music that, and that's what we did. And we never stopped. Never stopped.
Yeah, he's a big old whirlwind of creativity, and it must have been pretty exciting to get kind of caught up in that that maelstrom that is Devin Townsend around that time, which makes me think it was probably a little bit of light relief going to work with a band like Anthrax after that. Yes or no?
It's apples and oranges, but it's like Scott Ian couldn't be more different when it comes to work. Couldn't be more different from Devin. It's the yin and the yang. And I love working for Scott. I really do like it too.
Okay.
I mean, Anthrax is my new home, and I've been there for a little over 7 years now. Okay. And it's my thing. It's like I'm stage manager. It's like it's my I build, whereas Devin would build his own rigs, and I was always, kind of like doing the maintenance. With Scott, just shows up, plays, and leaves. He doesn't care about anything else. So it's like, it's all up to me. So I can do it my own way. And he gives me that freedom, which I really, really like. And also I've been an Anthrax fan all my life too.
Well, I was going to ask how big an Anthrax fan you were, because obviously that's one of the big four of thrash.
Cinderella story number 4.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
What happened was 1988. I went to the Monsters of Rock festival in Barcelona. Mm-hmm. So it was Iron Maiden, Metallica, Halloween, and Anthrax.
Cool.
So I saw Anthrax in 1988.
Yeah.
25 years later to that show, I mean, not exactly 25 years later, but 25 years later, Iron Maiden is doing the 25th anniversary of that tour, of the Seventh Son of a Seventh Son tour. They did Sonisphere in Spain, and Anthrax was on the bill. So I got the call to work for Scott for those 2 shows in Barcelona and Madrid, opening for Iron Maiden 25 years later to the show, when I saw them. So that was my first show in Madrid in front of like about 25,000 people following Iron Maiden, because Iron Maiden, they always have to finish around 10 o'clock. Mm-hmm. So they went on at 8:30. They finished at 10 or like 10:30. And then at 11 o'clock, Anthrax went on. We followed Iron Maiden. That was my first show with Anthrax.
Wow.
Talk about pressure. Yeah.
Cool. I mean, I love stories like that. I love a little bit of kind of serendipitous, seesaw balancing out, from being a kid who watched Anthrax in 1988 to seeing Maiden and Anthrax all those years later and it being your first show in pretty much the same place. That's brilliant. I mean, how are you feeling on that show, that first show with Iron Maiden? You must have been on top of the world.
It was crazy because I set up my gear and I made sure that everything worked. And then, it's like I'm waiting, and then I turn around and then there's Scott Ian, like I'm like, whoa, because I never spoke to the guy. I mean, right. I got introduced at the airport, like, hi, this is Armando who's going to look after you today. And he goes like, yeah, like I'm tag number 79 on his career. You know what I mean? It's like, he's there's so many people who and then there's Scott. I gave him his guitar and he's warming up and he's not on. I mean, he's just warming up and you could hear, just like the sound of the guitar pick with strings, just live strings.
Yeah.
And I go like, wow, that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? Like just like that. And then he goes and they start with Among the Living with the big intro and everything. They start playing the song and then the song ends and he comes running to me. I go like, oh shit. And he says like, sounds great. Walks away and then he starts playing Caught in the Mosh. And I go like, all right. So we did that.
That's great.
And then the second show was, and on the second show I was even taking pictures and, like laughing and everything. The first show, it was all 100% business. But yeah, that was pretty cool. I got Anthrax stories for days, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I mean, well, I'm interested to hear as many of them as you have. I mean, I'm all four of the big four of thrash I'm a big fan of, but I had a little period where I was just Anthrax were probably my favourite one of those four for a little bit. Yeah. They're also unbelievably reliably consistent live as well. Probably. Are they the most consistent one of those big four? They might be. Well, anyway, they're very, very good live always. Do they ever have an off day?
Yeah, no. You know what? No, not really. Even sometimes, like even when Joey's sick and, they still go and Joey sings. You know what I mean? It's like Joey's amazing because for his age, it's like all his peers, all the other singers at his age, what they do, like in all bands, is like what they do is like they tend to tune down because the singer, can't hit the notes anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, like they go half step, and then there's some bands that they're like so tuned down that it sounds like, ooh. But with Anthrax, what they did was quite the opposite. It's like back when they had John Bush in the band, they had to tune down because John Bush has a different register.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So they tuned down half step for John's register, but when Joey came back in the band, they never bothered, to change. So they stayed with the half step down. And then at some point, they did one song, a cover song, and they had to perform that song live, and there was keyboards. So they had to play that song in standard tuning, in standard 440.
Yeah.
And during sound check, they started playing, like Scott started playing like the old riffs, from Medusa and all that stuff in their, in the tuning that they're meant to be played. And Joey started singing like no problem. And then, after a couple songs, Scott goes like, so Joey's like, it's like, do you think you can go back to singing standard tuning? He goes like, tonight? He goes like, no, always. And he goes like, yeah, no problem. So it's like now they went back. They went back up. It's like now they play everything that is before 1991. Yeah, before Sound of White Noise. Everything is in standard tuning. So all those songs, they're back in standard right now in the set.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's amazing. Like Joey's incredible. He doesn't warm up. He just goes. It's insane. I mean, it's like those people. It's like they're 100% business minded. You know what I mean? It's like they don't have bad nights because they prepare for the show. And it doesn't matter if it's a major, like festival in a stadium with Iron Maiden or Metallica, whoever, or if it's like a club or anything. It's like 2 hours before the show, you're in the dressing room and everybody's like warming up and stretching out and like yoga mats everywhere. You know what I mean? It's like that's what they do, and then they show up ready always.
I mean, you can kind of tell really from when you see them. I don't think I've ever seen a bad Anthrax show. I was also going to ask. I mean, obviously you presumably have done the final Slayer run. As a long-time fan of the music and of metal music, I mean, how emotional, how great was that to kind of be on that run with a band as legendary as Slayer?
We didn't do the very last leg We did of the whole final tour. We missed a few legs for some. I mean, especially in America, because we had toured for so long that they replaced us with, I think it was Amon Amarth on one of those. It was Slayer, Lamb of God, Amon Amarth, and Cannibal Corpse. We missed that one, and then we missed the very last one with
Behemoth,
with
Lamb
Ministry and
Primus,
that's right. So, and Phil Anselmo. So we missed those two, but we did everything else. We did all the US runs, we did Europe, we did Australia, we did Japan, we did New Zealand. We had to cancel one of the shows in New Zealand because we show up, guess where, in Christchurch the day after, there was that the terrorist attack, what I mean? It's like we always seem to go to the most crazy places. Something happened, there we are. You know what I mean? It's like it's insane. We always come out, alive, but it's pretty insane. But yeah, it's like we had to cancel the show in Christchurch. But yeah, like the whole Slayer run was amazing. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it was, because also it's like everybody knows each other. Like we have toured with Lamb of God. We have supported Lamb of God in America, so we knew everybody there. And Anthrax and Slayer, they go way, way back.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like when we do shows with Iron Maiden, same thing. It's like they go way back to the 80s. Anthrax has been opening for Maiden since '88.
I mean, it seems when you say 88, in my head it doesn't feel like that long ago, but it's such a long time, and they're still going. Obviously, now we've seen the end of Slayer. Like, there's not going to be any Black Sabbath anymore, or there isn't a Black Sabbath anymore. We're never going to see Motorhead again. Just in amongst the kind of the few of the kind of legendary names.
We did that tour. We did Motorhead's last US tour ever.
Oh, really?
We did the motorboat, the cruise. We did it the 2 years.
Yeah.
We did both. We did Motorhead's last tour was the one in Europe right before Lemmy left us.
Yeah.
But before that, it was a US run. It was half the tour was Saxon opening. We opened for the second half, and then when the tour ended, we all went on and did the motorboat.
Mm.
And yeah, that was way more. They were way sadder than the Slayer thing, because it's like we could see Lemmy every day, and yeah, you could see every day he was less Lemmy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was pretty sad, but it is what it is, life.
Yeah, of course. But it makes you wonder with these kind of legendary bands, and as long as they've been going. I mean, do you ever think about, or has there ever been any conversation or any thoughts about the end of Anthrax, when that might happen, and what you'll do?
I don't see it happening anytime soon, unless something unexpected happens, like whatever. But when it comes to that, I see everybody being, like 120% into it. They have a proper setup now when it comes to management and like the whole thing, like all the politics, like record label, the whole thing is in place. Mm. So I don't see it. I really don't see it ending. But you never know.
Well, there's certainly older bands than them who are still playing. The Rolling Stones and Kiss are still doing it, so I think we could have another decade worth of Anthrax. Although it must be hell on Scott Ian's knees doing that stomp every day. That
guy will never stop. No, seriously, it's like he is intense, man.
Yeah.
It's insane to see that guy play. It's like also like what he does. He's got like this old school setup that it's so loud that it's seriously loud. It's insanely loud. It's just ridiculously loud, and it's my responsibility to keep him loud. You know what I mean? That's really cool. When people ask me like, "What's your favorite thing about working for Scott Ian?" I'm like, that I got to play the March of the SOD through his rig every day, or at least every time I want to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like I have that's my thing, so it doesn't suck at all.
That is definitely a little bonus for the sort of the job requirement, I think. What with everything that's going on now, I mean, what were the plans, and what do you think are the plans after all this kind of COVID stuff goes away? I mean, when do you see it? I know we kind of touched on it a little bit at the start, but when do you see it kind of easing off a bit?
Everybody's talking about 2021, so yeah. I hope they're right. But, it's like if you keep seeing, all those thousands and thousands of videos, going to the beach and getting on planes, going on vacation, and, and I don't know. It's a subject that really, really pisses me off.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, what am I going to tell you that hasn't been said already? So.
No, of course. How much do you miss it, or how much have you missed it over the last few months?
I mean, it's my lifestyle. It's what I do.
Yeah.
And what else they're gonna pay me? Like being like almost 46 years old. We're it's like that's what we were saying the other day with my friends. It's like we're highly qualified for a job that does not exist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like there's nothing else I can do. It's like maybe one of these days you go to Tesco's and you see me like stocking the shelves, because you know what I mean. It's like right now, it's like where am I gonna go? Mm. It's pretty intense.
Well, Amando, I sincerely hope, and I genuinely do believe that it won't come to you stacking shelves in Tesco. I really do genuinely believe that we will get back to some sort of normality at some point.
Yeah.
So before I let you go, we always end the podcast with the question or questions: best day and worst day on the job, basically. So you've got a least favourite day and a very, very greatest day that you can remember.
Well, the least favorite day is can happen, when, some days it's like stuff doesn't work, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, like gear breaks and issues happen, and, and I always said like my worst day on this job is way better than my best day, at my old job. So,
That's a very, very
still,
good way to look
it's
at
like,
it.
for instance, it has happened even recently, like last summer. Speaking of Wacken, I had a really bad show at Wacken last year. It's like what was supposed to work didn't work, and I had to tell Scott to soldier through, and him being the trooper that he is, he rolled through the punches. But you know what I mean? It was a really, really stressful show. Mm. Yeah, it's like I was really bummed out for a while after that.
Yeah, that must be bad on a big stage on a big day like that. That must be kind of annoying.
Yeah, it's like you always feel bad regardless. But you know what I mean? It's like you have one job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you're not able to do it, I mean, it's like you got to make your guy look good. Mm. And if he doesn't look good and it's your responsibility, it's like you got to do something about it. But Scott, the cool thing about Scott is that he's got 100% common sense. In terms of like you tell him what's wrong and you explain and you don't bullshit him. You just tell him straight. It's like, this is what's happening. And I'm trying to fix it. Or like the next day. And he's like, is it fixed? No, but I'm working on it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's this thing. As long as you don't bullshit him, you're fine. Because you need to realize that guy, the day I worked my first show in my life, he already had 20 years on me.
Yeah.
So who am I to bullshit him? You know what I mean? It's like he can catch me, in a lie, so fast, it's not even worth it. Mm. So that's for the bad. And then for the good, there's been so many good experiences, or like, touring South America with Iron Maiden, on being on the Air Force One for a month, doing, like Motorhead's last tour, all the Slayer stuff, like the Albert Hall with Devin, there's been so many. But I would like to say that the best day is yet to come, because I think that the best day is gonna be the day we go back to work.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I mean,
and the day I get to hang out with my friends and we go to Japan or go to wherever we go, and we bring the riffs to the masses again.
Well, it can't come soon enough, to be honest, Armando. I think we all miss it, and we all want it back as quickly as we can possibly get it. Amando, thanks very much for chatting to us and being on the show. It's much appreciated. No, thank you for your continued service, for bringing the riffs to us, and I look forward to getting some more, fingers crossed, in the very, very near future. If it has to be 2021, it has to be 2021, but hopefully that comes sooner rather than later. All right, there you go. Really, really want to say thank you so much for Armando for coming on the show. Top guy, great insight into the workings and the mechanics of one of the big metal bands of all time. Sitting there with Scott Ian's guitars every night, it seems like an incredibly daunting thing to do, but just listening to Armando just seems like the taking it all on the chin, the easiest thing that could possibly be done. What a lad. Thank you so much, Armando, for coming on, and thank you very much for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to give us some love, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on Instagram, you can go to Twitter and find us on the handle @RoadCrewPods. That is if you want to give us a shout out. If you'd like to leave a review or say anything nice on wherever it is that you are listening to this podcast, be it on the iTunes or Acast or Podbean or whatever, then we would be really, really thankful if you would do that. Again, want to say a massive thanks to our friends at Signature Brew for their continued support. As I said, signaturebrew.co.uk is where you can go and enjoy some of their delicious beverages, which I fully recommend. And we will be back next week with another guest. We've got some really, really brilliant guests lined up. I mean, I think this series has been excellent. The big hitters keep coming because we've got a really, really great guest again next week. I'm not going to tell you who it is. I've got into a bit of a habit of doing this kind of, they're great, and teasing it. But hey, have I lied? I don't think I have. So come back next week and listen again for another fantastic guest. But that's it for me. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.